It's a very big zchus to have been invited by the officers of the Premier. I thank Shia Landau for first calling me. I thank the people of Chazak for putting this together. And when I found out that Rabbi Bluestein, who's just a fireball of Torah and Yerushalayim and Chesed, is the Rav of this shul, that put it all together. And I hope that we'll be able to get, hopefully, a Torah perspective on a very, very sad and difficult topic. But first I want to say that there's a lady here, Mrs. Penkin, and her mother's yahrzeit is right now Fredo Basara, the mother of Fegi Penkin. Everything that we do tonight should be a zchus in your mother's neshama, and hopefully that will accomplish a tremendous amount tonight. This is a very sad topic for me personally. When I was first beginning my speaking career, it started basically in 1985 after the Maggid Speaks came out. People felt if I could write a story, maybe I could tell a story. And I was invited in different places throughout New York, and then throughout the United States, in Houston, and then in Cleveland, Los Angeles. And then I got to go overseas. And I remember the first time that I was in Antwerp, in Belgium, and I was supposed to speak in a synagogue, in a shul, and somebody drove me to the shul. I could not believe it. There were cement barriers right around the whole shul, and there were police outside the shul. I had never seen that before, certainly not in America. And then a few weeks later, I was in São Paulo, Brazil, and in São Paulo, you would not believe, you cannot walk into a shul the way we walked in here tonight. Do you know that in São Paulo, Brazil, when you walk into the door of a shul, you're in a little cubicle. The door locks behind you, and there's a door that's locked in front of you, and the security guards have to check you out and make sure that you're not a terrorist. And then you could walk into the shul. And then I came to England, and every school that I went to in England was behind a big gate, and there were guards at every doorway. And then, this past week, I just got back from South Africa, and I've been there many, many times. I love the people in South Africa. They're the most wonderful people with the greatest accent in the world. But every house and every shul is behind barbed wire or a huge fence. And every time that I went to these places, England, São Paulo, Antwerp, and South Africa, I felt, Baruch Hashem, in my country, in our country, there's no such thing. We can go to every shul. There's no barbed wire. There's no police. Who would ever believe that we might come to that in a country that I love so much? Now, my mother was born in Philadelphia, and the home of Benjamin Franklin, the Liberty Bell, Declaration of Independence, and she taught me a great pride in America. Now, I know you're not going to believe this, but nobody can deny it because I was there. I went to Torah Das, and in the second grade, Mrs. Bromberg taught us America the Beautiful. And if I'm in a foreign country and I hear the national anthem, I start crying. Now, I told that to my wife. She says, well, you cry for anything. But it's not true. It's not true. I get very emotional when I hear the national anthem. And I'm not going to sing you America the Beautiful, but I could sing it, believe me. And Mrs. Bromberg wrote all the words on the board, and all the kids sang it. We knew that. So there was a great pride in our country. And what I always felt was my country. And then all of a sudden, we begin to realize, something? Maybe it's not exactly our country. It's not exactly my country. It's a country that we share with many, many people. And till now, many of them have admired us and tolerated us. But now, all of a sudden, we hear the terrible things that went on in Pittsburgh, and then on Pesach and Poway, and Jersey City, and Muncie, and what's going on? How could this be happening? What is going on? How does an Erlich Yid respond to all of this? Now I'll tell you something very interesting. I used to think that if Joe Lieberman, who is such a wonderful, wonderful person, I had the schus to do his grandson in YU. His son-in-law was in a kollel in YU. So this person was almost vice president. Could you imagine? I'll tell you a great story. You know, he's from Bridgeport. So I remember one morning, I had a bris in Rabbi Epstein's shul, and I was told that there's going to be a special person. Nobody told me who's going to be there, but I've got to be on time. There can be no mistake. I've got to be there on time. So, of course, I made sure to be there, a half hour early before Shacharis. And I come there, and there's Secret Service on the roof, and there's Secret Service around the whole building. And I find out Joe Lieberman, who was running for president, he was going to be the Sandik. Now, we davened, and he's wearing his talis, he's a Elchei person, and we do the bris. And after the bris, I know you're not going to believe this, and Joe Lieberman loves when I tell the story. A guy comes over to me, he says, "You see that guy over there right behind the mechitza?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He had a gun on you the whole time you were doing the bris." I said, "He had a gun on me?" He said, "You had the Sandik, somebody who could be the future vice president of the United States, and you had a knife 3 inches from his heart." Never thought of it that way, right? Right? The bris was in his lap, right? And I had a knife, and this guy had a gun just in case. I made it. Could you believe that's America? But okay, listen, I laugh at it, and so does Joe. And he made me tell it over in YU when I did the bris there before I did his grandson. We had a few extra minutes. We were waiting for somebody. But the point is, in a country where we almost had a Jewish vice president who wears talis and tefillin, all of a sudden everybody is frightened. Now, I'll tell you something very interesting. Ever since I got married, I always wore my talis. Thank you. I always wore my talis. When I went to shul, I wore it outside my coat, outside my jacket. I was so proud, in America you could walk with a talis in the street. And I remember one time somebody told me that Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky said you shouldn't walk like that to shul on Shabbos. Don't walk with your talis over your jacket. Because the Goyim think that you own America, and they don't like that. You have to be careful. And I never thought of it that way, but when they told me Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said that, so now I don't wear my talis over my jacket or my coat. I'll wear the talis over my jacket, but the coat is over the talis. Because we're in Golus. And we have to remember that. And I'll tell you, recently, a very choshev Rav in Brooklyn, Rav Moshe Tuvi Leaf, was talking about anti-Semitism, and he said that, what the Chassam Sofer Paskind? I was amazed. The Chassam Sofer Paskind that in Golus, not in Eretz Yisrael, you're not supposed to light the Hanukkah candles outside. You could light it by a window, but you don't light it outside if you're in Golus. My mother used to have an expression, "Mishtech nicht ois de Eugen," right? Don't hurt the eyes of the Goyim. You have to act in such a way that you're part of the country, but you're a visitor, really. This is not our country. We share the country with others. And I think that is one of the first things that we have to do. You see, the topic tonight that said on the flyer, "Stop the Hate," is very misleading, because we will never be able to stop the hate. The only thing that we could do is curb the hate. Curb the hate. Every one of us. And I'm going to show you how you can do it. We can curb the hate, but the hate is inborn in the secular world. Now, I'll give you an idea how all of us can begin to curb the hate. If you always think of making a Kiddush Shem Shemayim. I'll give you an example. I just got back this morning from a conference, such a beautiful, beautiful conference in Canada. It's from the COR organization, Council of Rabbis. It's the Kashrus organization. And you wouldn't believe this Shabbos was Mashgichim Appreciation Shabbos. When we go to a restaurant or we go for Shabbos in a hotel or in a yontif in a hotel, Mashgichim are working very hard. They're the unsung heroes. Many times they're in the kitchen and we're in the dining room. Many times they can't even go to the minyan because they got to be up early making sure that everything is served on time and with the ultimate level of kashrus. So Rabbi Tzvi Haber, who has in-laws here in Lawrence, Sam and Sarah Bergman, he's a wonderful person. He's the head, one of the heads of this organization. And they had this wonderful, wonderful group of mashgichim and rabbonim, Talmidei Chachamim. It was such an elevating Shabbos. Now let's watch what happens at the front desk, and then you will see how a person can be Makadosh Shem Shemayim and make sure that a Gentile woman would never say anything negative about a Jewish person. My wife told me this happened last night. This fellow was checking out. He was one of the mashgichim, and his son was standing next to him, and he had like a little bag of bamba. And the kid was not careful, and he spilled it. And it was on the floor. So this mashgiach got down on the floor, and he started cleaning it up and picking it up. And the lady behind the desk said, "Sir, you don't have to do that. I'll get housekeeping." And you know what he said? "We spilled it, so we have to clean it." Now, not only is that a great lesson for the child, that if you spilled it, you got to clean it, and his father got down and did it, and my wife said she got down and helped them. And the lady behind the counter, the Goyish woman, was standing there in awe. Here's a man with a beard, who she probably considers everybody with a beard a rabbi, so what am I, but whatever. But, right? But the point is, right? But the point is, the rabbi is down on the floor and he's cleaning up the bamba. So that's a Kiddush Hashem. So the next time somebody might say something about a Jewish person, that lady behind the counter, she's going to say, "Let me tell you, they're very nice people." And I think that if we are always sensitive to others, especially the goyim in the street, I'll give you a small example. Last week, I was in South Africa. I was there for the Dirshur Siyam Hashas, and then I stayed a couple of days, and I spoke many, many times, and I flew back. Now, most of the time when you're on a flight and you have a kosher meal, somehow they always give you the kosher meal first. They have a few of them, they ask you if they have to open it, and then they want to cook it up for you, so you get your meal before the regular people get it. And you know something? I never open it until the guy sitting next to me gets his meal. Because do I need that he should think, well, that Jew, what, he's so special, he gets his meal first, and he's going to eat, and poor me, I haven't eaten in 3 hours, right? And that's sensitive. And don't think they don't pick it up. And that's what I mean by curbing hate. Many times when we drive, you're wearing a yarmulke, you're wearing a snood, they know you're a Jew. And you blow the horn an extra time, or you cut them off. Then you represent all of Klal Yisrael. One of the first things that we have to learn, especially now, is that we have to be Makadosh Shem Shemayim. Now, Rav Pam says that in the Torah, when it says V'nikdashti b'serich b'nei Yisrael, the Iker, the main Kiddush Hashem is among Yidden. In other words, you have to act in a certain way so that another Yid should say, "Whoa, that's how I would like to be. That's how I would like to raise my children." But in today's day and age, I wouldn't say it's just as important, but certainly almost as important to be Makadosh Shem Shemayim in front of Goyim. Don't do anything that they could criticize. You're on a plane and you got to put stuff in the overhead bin and you fill it up before the guy even gets there, because you put everything that you have up there, even your coat, but they tell you not to put up. You know, they're bound to say, "Look at that Jew. He's insensitive," or "She's insensitive." And all these things, that's the first lesson tonight. Am I making a Kiddush Shem Shemayim? Am I walking the way I walk, the way I dress, the way I talk? Because we all interact with Goyim every single day. Clerks in all the stores, plane agents, TSA people. When was the last time you said thank you to a TSA agent? I want to tell you what happened with me. I was once...
I do all the time.
I thank you and I stand up for you.
You know why? Because we're all people.
That's right. Now listen to this. I was on the way to Toronto a number of years in Air Canada, and we're about to get on the plane, and all of a sudden 2 officers in uniform come to our gate. And everybody's wondering, why are the 2 uniformed officers coming to the gate? Is there a terrorist that's about to get on board? And they come over to me. It's very embarrassing. And the guy takes out a cell phone, and he says to me, excuse me, is this your cell phone? Which reminds me, I better shut it off. Okay. So I said, no, sir. I've got mine in my pocket. I'm trying to shut this, okay? I've got mine in my pocket, and I take a look, it's not in my pocket. It's not my pants pocket, not my shirt pocket, not my jacket pocket. I look at it, I can't believe he's got my phone. I said, sir, how do you have my phone? The man says to me, I don't know where you're going, but you had so many bins of stuff, and you only took, most of them, but one, you left your phone in there. I said to him, officer, I can't thank you enough. I got 700 numbers programmed in there. If I would have lost that phone, I'd have to get a new phone and program all those numbers all over again. Fine, and I thanked him profusely. And then as he was about to leave, I don't know what possessed me to ask him this. So it was in Air Canada and LaGuardia. I said to him, officer, you got to tell me this. There are 2,000 people in this terminal. How in the world did you find me? I thought for sure he was going to say, you're the only one wearing a black hat. That's what I thought he was going to say. That's not what he said. He said, do you remember what you said to me and my friend as you passed by security? I said, no, what did I say? He said, you looked at us and you said to both of us, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I feel safer that you're here. He said, thousands of people go through security every day. No one says thank you. You said thank you. We were going to find you if you were the last guy in the terminal. Now, don't they deserve a thank you? Would you like to have their job? Would you like to smell 5,000 pairs of socks a day? Right? Everybody's taking off their shoes and you got to stand there? Right? So they deserve a thanks. Now listen to this. You won't believe it. So everybody wherever I went, I was telling this important point of saying thank you. A couple months later, a guy comes over to me and says, Rabbi Krohn, you're not going to believe this. I was in Kennedy Airport. And I remembered your story from Air Canada, so when I went through security about Air Canada, I said thank you to the officer. So the guy says to me, oh, you heard the rabbi tell the story? Right? Imagine that? Because a lot of people, they realize that it's not so often that you say thank you, but if a man with a yarmulke, or somebody who looks Jewish, you can see his tzitzis, thank you so much. You see his tzitzis and you see a woman wearing a sheitel, a woman wearing a snood, a woman that's dressed like a Yiddish woman is supposed to be dressed. And they say thank you, as I'm saying to Rabbi Bluestein. So that's a Kiddush Shem Shemayim. That's how we're going to curb the hate. The first lesson tonight is always try to make a Kiddush Shem Shemayim. And if you're going to blow the horn, think twice who's in that car. If you're going to cut somebody off, think twice who that person could be. And I'll tell you something else, that I think the way we, as Erlich Yidden, have to respond. You know, there's a very, very famous pasuk that we all know. Hakol kol Yaakov vayadayim b'dei Esav, right? So let me tell you a little joke about that pasuk that has nothing to do with the speech, but it's adorable. I once heard that the Baba of a Rebbe say that when the alarm clock goes off, says somebody should get to the minyan on time, that's the kol Yaakov. But when he puts his hand on the snooze alarm so he can sleep 15 minutes, that's the Yadayim B'dei Esav. I don't know if he said it, but a Baba V'chassid told me he said it. Fine. But listen to this Gemara. This is frightening. It's actually a Medrash Rabbah, Samachei, and Bereshis Rabbah, Samachei Kov. Omer Rabbarachia. B'shor sheYaakov merachin b'koiloi, when we don't hear the voice of Yaakov, we don't hear the Yidden's voice in a shul or in a Beis Medrash, oy vei ubish, then Yedei Esav sheletes. There's never the same time kol Yaakov and Yadayim Yedei Esav. If kol Yaakov is strong, Yadayim Yedei Esav is weak. However, ubishoshu matzavtei b'koiloi, but when we daven out loud, Ein hayadayim yedei Esav sheiletes, then the hands of Esav will not be strong. So I want to tell all of you, if you can, because today you have the parish of the Ramban in English, go to the end of Parshas Boy and read the Ramban and Perik Yud Gimel Pasuk to Zion, and he gives foundations of hashkafa and amuna. I'm going to tell you why we do so many of the mitzvahs. And you know what he says? You know why we have shuls? He said, why did Hashem make it that people should invent shuls? He said that people should be able to come and they should be able to daven out loud, and they should pride themselves and say, B'riyoseicha anachnu, we are your creations. And you know what? The Ramban has an expression, and tonight we're going to make a Kabbalah from now on, every single one of us, because I believe this could combat anti-Semitism. The Ramban says, this is the kavanah what Chazal say, Vayikru el Elokim b'chazaka, that they should call to Hashem out loud. It's a pasuk in Yoina. And he writes, Mikan atalomed, shetfila tzricha koil. You got to daven out loud. Let's be makabel from now on. Shemoneh Esrei, you're not allowed to daven out loud. But let's everybody undertake one tefillah tonight. From now on, and I'm telling you, I started it. I would never, ever ask anybody to do it, something that I don't do myself. When I saw this Ramban, I decided, you know what? The Ramban has an expression. Listen, it's an Aramaic expression. Chatzifa notzach levisha. Boldness can overcome evil. Tonight, everyone, let's make a Kabbalah. The one part of davening, we're going to daven out loud. From now on, Ashrei. Let's do something that we do every day. Ashrei, Oleinu. We'll say it out loud, and we'll say it slow, and let's learn the meaning of the words. That's what Yadayim Yadei Esav. We don't want the Yadayim Yadei Esav. We don't want any Pittsburgh and Poway and Jersey City and Muncie and all the other places. So that's what he's saying. This could combat it. You have the Kol Yaakov, so we won't have Yadayim Yadei Esav. How are we going to do the Kol Yaakov? You know how we're going to do it? Daven out loud. Now I want to tell you something. With all due respect to the wonderful government officials that were here before, we are not going to get rid of anti-Semitism by having guns in shul. We may have to have guns in shul, and we may have to have people in every shul who have guns secretly, and that they'll have to use them chas v'shalom if something happens, but that's not going to curb hate. What's going to curb hate is two things. One, if we show respect to the goyim that they shouldn't hate us, that we treat them as human beings, they are Hashem's creations. You don't have to love them and marry them, but you got to respect them. They're human beings. You got to say thank you. You got to drive like a mensch. You got to dress like a mensch when you come among people, whether they're Jews or not. And the second thing is, who are we kidding? This is a wake-up call. Our Father has given us a patch. He's scaring us. We're all scared. Let's face it. We're all scared. You know why we're scared? Because these things are contagious. All of us remember when planes started being hijacked. What happened? One guy hijacks the plane. The next week somebody else is hijacking the plane. And then somebody else is doing it. What happened all of a sudden? Because it becomes like a fad. And then after a while it stops. And it's my hope to Hashem that this will also stop. But one thing is for sure. Hashem has, said to us, come on guys, you got to straighten out a little bit. You don't want that Yadayim Yadei Esav, you got to have that Kol Yaakov. Tonight, every one of us has to make a Kabbalah. For now, we're going to say Ashiyotz out loud. Even if nobody's there, it makes no difference. Say one tefillah out loud. Make that Kol Yaakov happen and make it become a reality. I want to tell you one more thing about tefillah. When we daven, many times our bodies are here and our minds are someplace else. Why is that? You know what the answer is? Because most of us really don't know the meaning of the words. And from now on, we got to learn the meaning of the words. I want to tell you a little secret. Rabbi Bluestein and all the Talmidei Chachamim, Rabbi Yankelowitz, and all the Talmidei Chachamim here, they can tell you. You know what it says in the first siman of Shulchan Aruch? It's better to daven less and understand more than to daven more and understand less. That's why many times our bodies are here and our minds are someplace else. So tomorrow, go and get the book, 2 books if you can. One book is Rabbi Avram Chaim Foyer on Shemon Esrei. It's a wonderful sefer printed by ArtScroll. And the second is Rav Schwab on prayer. That's a little bit deeper. But you'll understand it. I know. You'll get it and you'll understand it. Because you're intelligent.
Me?
No, her. Right there in the green. Yes. Okay. Everybody can understand it. Rav Schwab wrote it, said that everybody should understand it. But let's learn the meaning of davening. And then all of a sudden, our davening is going to be better. Now listen to this. You know, I once met a great tzaddik in Bnei Brak. His name was Rabbi Schlesinger. And I was told that he knew many stories about a certain Rosh Yeshiva, Rab Chatzkel Abramsky. So I said to him, Rebbe, maybe you could tell me a story about Rab Chatzkel Abramsky that nobody knows? He said, yeah, I'll tell you a great story about him. He said, you know, he lived in Bayit Vagan, and he had a neighbor, the Amshinov Rebbe. And the Amshinov Rebbe was very sick once, and he needed a transfusion. So they went to Rab Chatzkel Abramsky and said, you know, your friend the Rebbe, he needs a transfusion. He's very sick. He said, oh, we got to say Tillim for him. But he said, you know, you should know, I daven every day that I don't need a transfusion. He said, every day? You daven that you don't need a transfusion? Where do you daven every day that you don't need a transfusion? He said, you daven it also, except you don't realize. So he said, listen how he typed it. It's unbelievable. We say in Rachem, V'no al tatzrichenu, Hashem alekeinu. Hashem, make it that we don't need loyli de matnas. We don't need the present basar v'dom. Basar, like a transplant, of a heart transplant, a lung transplant, a kidney transplant, or dom, a transfusion. I couldn't believe he was serious. I said, that's how he typed it? And I came back to Brooklyn and I asked Rab David Cohen, I said, could you type it that way? He said, of course. You type it the regular way, loyli de matnas basar v'dom, but the Chazal made up words that you could have a double and a triple meaning. So, but if you're looking in a siddur and then you see the meaning, then you're going to come up with some nice thoughts about tefillah and then underline it in your siddur. So listen to this, you won't believe it. Last year I was in Eretz Yisrael, I was in a restaurant with my 3 granddaughters and my wife, and the guy from the food department comes over to me and says, Rabbi Krohn, because of you, I came up with a new pshat in davening. I said, because of me? He said, remember you told that pshat, Lili de matnas basar v'dom, you know, the transplant, the transfusion? He said, look, I'm in the food business. Listen how I typed this pasuk, you won't believe it. Noisein lechem lechol basar ki li'olam chastai. Hashem noisein lechem, He gives bread to all human beings. Ki li'olam chastai. Hashem is so great, full of chesed. So he says, you know how I typed it? What if you want to have a hot dog? So what kind of bread do you get? You get a bun, right? Yeah, but what happens if you want to have cheese and lox? You're not going to eat it on a bun, you eat it on a bagel. And what happens if you want to have a shawarma? You're not going to eat it on a bun or a bagel, you eat it on a lafa. And what happens if you want to have falafel balls? You eat it on a pita. Wow, look how great God is. Noisein lechem, He gives us all kinds of bread, l'chol basar, all kinds of bread, all kinds of meat, right? You want a hot dog? I'll get you a bun. You want a cheese and lox? I'll get you a bagel. Shawarma, I'll get you a lafa. Pita, you know, for falafel balls. Whatever. I mean, I don't know what they serve at the premier, but I presume they do that, right? So this is the Noisein Lechem Hotel, right? Okay? So Noisein Lechem, the whole basar. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to have that kavanah when I daven, exactly, but the point is, because that's what he was thinking about. He was thinking about the meaning of the words of davening. And that's really what we have to do. And I'll tell you one more thing about davening, then we'll go to the next point of this discussion. All of us remember that very, very sad, tragic incident when 3 beautiful Israeli boys, Naftali, Gilad, and Ayal, were never kidnapped. And for 2 weeks, nobody knew where they were. And it was so sad. And nobody could understand. The Israeli detectives are the smartest guys in the world. How could they not find where these kids were? And then Nebuch, after 2 weeks, everybody found out that they were killed, kidnapped and killed and buried. And I know somebody that went to be Menachem Mrs. Frankel, Naphtali's mother. And she said the most incredible thing. Something so holy, it's hard to believe that somebody in our generation could be on such a high ramah. Listen to what she said. She said, at the end, I had a partial nechama, a partial consolation. And everybody was wondering, she lost a teenage child. What kind of consolation could she possibly have? Listen to what she said. She said, I knew that my son loved doing mitzvahs. And the mitzvah that he loved to do more than any other mitzvah was the mitzvah of tefillin. And I knew, she said, there was no way those terrorists were going to let him wear his tefillin for those 2 weeks that he was in captivity. But then when I found out that he was killed the first day, I said, at least Baruch Hashem, my son didn't have to go 1 day without wearing tefillin. Could you imagine the holiness of such a lady? She lost a child, and she's grateful that he didn't have to go 1 day without wearing tefillin. And I said that when I heard that, every one of us that wears tefillin, every one of us that davens, has to make a commitment that we're going to be so careful not to talk and not to keep our cell phones on when we daven. We should disconnect our cell phones to reconnect to Hashem. And wherever I went, I spoke about Naphtali in the midst of tefillin. And many of you know Rabbi Yaron Halbatal, tremendous Talmud Chacham, a great Rebbe in Darkei Torah. He calls me up, he says, Rabbi Krohn, don't you realize what you're saying? He said, you said Naphtali's favorite mitzvah was tefillin. Hold on to your seatbelts. Naphtali is the Oisies tefillin. Nun, Pei, Tov, Lamed, Yud, Tov, Pei, Lamed, Yud, Nun. You could go crazy from that. You know what that means? That your name is a nevuah, is a prophecy of what you're all about. Whatever your name is, and the posik that you say for your name at the end of Shemoneh Esrei, that's the definition of your life. Now, if you can't figure it out, go to a Rav or go to a Makubal, but they'll tell you, when your parents gave you the name, it's not that you just named you after an uncle and aunt, a grandfather, grandmother. But there's a definition, there's a reason why you got that name. And just again, to be light for a moment, everybody knows my name is Paysach. Now, I'm writing a Haggadah now, hopefully it's going to be out in time for Yontif. And when you read the Haggadah and you read everything about the Yontif, Pesach is a combination of two Aramaic words. Peh, soch, a mouth that speaks. You know what my middle name is? Yosef, which means a lot. Now, I guarantee you, when my mother named me Pesach Yosef, she was not thinking that I was going to be a speaker. Right? She was thinking about her father, whose name was Pesach Yosef. But look at that. Your name is a nevuah. So again, as we said, we have to make sure that we are Makadosh Shem Shemayim. We're never going to stop the hate, but we could curb the hate if we treat Goyim with dignity. And we try to make a Kiddush Shem Shemayim. And the second thing we're going to try to do, we're going to try to increase our Kol Yaakov by davening out loud. Davening less and understanding more. Whether you say Ashrei, Ashayotza, Aleinu, whatever. Let's make a Kabbalah tonight before you go to sleep. What part of davening are you going to start saying out loud so that the Kol Yaakov will be there and the Yadayim Yadei Esav will not be there? Now I want to tell you something very interesting. You know, we all remember the story when Yaakov Avinu sends his children down to Mitzrayim because there was a hunger. Now, Chazal tell us that Yaakov and his family, they really had food. But Yaakov sent them down to Mitzrayim anyway. Now listen to the pasuk. The pasuk is in Bereshis Mem Beis, pasuk Aleph. Vaya Yaakov saw ki yesh shever b'Mitzrayim, that there are provisions in Mitzrayim. Vayeme Yaakov lebonov, and Yaakov says to his children, Lama Sisro, let's remember that word. Lama Sisro, why do you make yourselves conspicuous? Why should we show everybody we have enough food? We don't have to go down to Mitzrayim to get food. Don't make yourself obviously wealthy, even if you are. Because it rips out the eyes of the Goyim. I want to say to everybody, and when I say everybody, I don't mean only over here in Premiere. This video, by 24 hours, will be literally around the world. In Argentina, in Chile, in Canada, in England, South Africa, in Israel, all across the country of America. For one of the greatest organizations in the world, TorahAnytime.com, millions of hours of Torah are learned a year because of them. And so I want to say to everybody, don't decorate the outside of your homes in such beautiful ways. You can't see it. You're in your house. Who sees it? The goyim that are passing by. And they're jealous. You want to make your house beautiful? Do it inside. Don't do it outside. There is such a thing as ayin hara. Don't make any mistake about it. Don't make anyone jealous of you, especially non-Jewish people. Those of us who daven Nusach Sfard know that we daven every day in Elokai Nitzor. Hashem, make sure that nobody's jealous of me and that I'm not jealous of others. Because there's a price to pay if people are jealous of you. You have anything good in your life, there's only one person that you can tell it to that won't be jealous of you. Your mother. Nobody else. Not your brother-in-law, not your sister-in-law, no one. You have a beautiful home, don't make a Sudas Haidor, nobody cares. Don't do it. Give tzedakah. Help other people if Hashem blessed you with funds. Don't make a party, everybody should go to all the rooms and see your fancy curtains and fancy furniture. They couldn't give a dash. Really. All they want is they're wondering why they can't have it. That's all they care about. Don't do it. And that's what Yaakov is saying. Lama Sisro. Why do you make yourselves conspicuous? If you're going to go to a hotel for Yontif, that's great. It's nobody's business. You don't have to tell everyone. These are phenomenal expenses, and if Hashem blessed you that you could afford it, wonderful. Take advantage of it. But don't tell everyone. Don't tell everyone you're going to Orlando with your whole family, and your mother-in-law, and your father-in-law, and your sister-in-law, and the dogs and the cats and everybody, and the nurses' maids. It makes people feel awful because people can't afford it. And when you in a workplace and the goyim hear it, I mean, I don't know if you've ever, I haven't been to a goyish wedding, but I'm told that the goyish weddings are like a third of the way we make weddings. So if you're going to have goyim at your wedding, you have to be careful. You rip their eyes out, and they hate us for it. And I'll tell you something amazing. There's a pasuk in the Torah. We should all look up this Klei Yakar. Every single time I go to Prague, and we stand outside the Maral Shul, I always say this Klei Yakar, because the Klei Yakar was also a Rov in the Maral Shul after the Maral. The Klei Yakar was one of the rabbis there. And you know what he says? A fabulous pshat. In Dvarim Beis, Pasuk Gimel. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Rav lachem soivas ha'arazeh. It's enough, you were around this mountain a long time. P'nu lachem tzvayin. It's now time to go north. And you know what the Klei Yakar says? Tzvayna means hidden. That's why at the Seder, when we take out the Afrikaim, it is called Tzofan, because it's been hidden. And he writes, She'im yimtza ha'yisraeli eza hatzlacha. If the Eibishter benched you with a certain hatzlacha, yatmenu, hide it. V'yitzfenenu hakol b'fnei Esav. Don't show the whole world. Ki ein lecha uma shemis ka'enes b'Yisrael k'ma Esav. Esav is still angry at Yaakov because they claim you took the bracha away from my father. I deserved it. So now, you know what the Klei Yakar says? Why is it the Bayidin? If they have $100, they have to show they have 200. Why did so many Yidden live beyond their means? If you could only afford a certain amount, that's what you could afford. Be happy with it. Why do you have to show the world that you have so much, and especially if you don't have it, and then you go show it? It just leads to jealousy. It leads to anger. It leads to hatred. We're never going to stop the hatred. But one thing we can do, and that is we could curb the hatred. And I'll tell you, there's a Rashi, you could look it up, in Bereshis Lamed Gimel Pasuk Daled. Rashi says, halachahi. It's a halacha, it's a fact of life. B'yadua she'esav soine liYaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. It's on the pasuk that Esav kissed him. So at that moment he saw his brother. He hadn't seen him in a long time. He hugged him and he kissed him. But that was unusual. But I'm telling you, you could be nice and the goyim will hug you. I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I'm going to tell you what happened this morning. I was in Toronto, as I told you. I get to the airport, JetBlue, we were supposed to go 5:30 in the morning. Turned out that the plane came in last night from Boston late and the pilots had to sleep, so we had to wait 2 hours. So I had to go to the other side of the airport just to find out, when exactly the plane was going to leave. So they have these electric carts, and there was a guy who was waiting there, and I said, would you mind taking me to the other side? And then we get into a little conversation. The best thing that you could do anytime you meet anybody, Jew or otherwise, ask them their name. Everybody loves their name. I asked him his name, he tells me his name. I said, I just got back from South Africa. He says, yeah, I was born there. I said, I recognize that name. And we got into a whole discussion as he was driving me to the other side. And we're talking about, my being a rabbi and speaking in different topics. And I showed him a picture in South Africa, his hometown, his home country, a big synagogue with all the girls there from all the different schools. It was so amazing what they did in South Africa. It was as if Satmar, Shalamis, and Beis Yaakov came together at one gathering. The Achdus, it's so unbelievable. The people, I'm telling you, the principals who came there, they were crying because they know each other. They never had such a kinos before. All the schools, not that Satmar has a school there, but I'm just saying, from the right to the left to the middle, they were all there. 500 girls. And we spoke about Chesed and Achdus. It was fabulous. So I showed him the picture. And you know something? When he brought me back to where my wife was sitting, I was thinking, what is my wife thinking? This guy gets off the cart and he gives me a big hug. Guy from South Africa. He said, you my rabbi. I'm going to call you because I gave him my card. I said, Seti, you could call me anytime. I'm waiting for his text. He didn't text me yet. But could you imagine what the people in the airport must have thought of? Which guy on an electric cart is hugging a rabbi, right? Because he drove him to the other side of the airport. Because you know something? If you're a nice guy, people will love you. And you ask them their name. Again, we're not going to stop the hate, but you could curb the hate. I'm telling you, you could curb the hate. And you could be friendly with anyone. And that's what we're coming here for tonight. To talk about what we can do to make sure that we can curb the hate. Now I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you a great story with a great expression. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to be in Manchester. And I had the schus to be able to speak. I was going to speak in an auditorium for 500 women. I knew that they were waiting. I'm staying by the Bamberger home. I'm about to go. Somebody said to me, wait, you can't go yet. I said, well, what happened? No, you got to go visit somebody. I said, and now I'm going to go visit? There's 500 women waiting for me. No. There's a woman. Her name is Rebbe Tzachavi Wakshal. She's brilliant, but she has MS. And she's in a wheelchair, and she's paralyzed. And she wants to see you on the way there. Is there any way you could just say Shalom Aleichem to her? I mean, how are you going to say no to something like that, right? Okay, so I said, okay, fine. So let's get in the car right away. We'll just go. I'll just say hello, and, we're going to go. I come into the house, 25 women sitting around the table. They're going to wait to hear a shiur from her. And so far, she's not yet in. And then they open up the curtain from behind the dining room, and they wheel her in, and I thought I would faint. A young, radiant woman in the early 40s, paralyzed, and she could only get along in a wheelchair. And they wheel her to the table, and she thanks me for coming, and she says, Rabbi Krohn, I need a favor from you. And I'm thinking, I don't know what she's going to ask me, but how am I going to say no in front of everybody here? I said, what can I do for you? She said, I'm writing a book about my travails, my difficulties, and it's called Facing Adversity with Faith. And please write me a letter for the book. I said, I should write you a letter? you have Rav Segel, the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, lives here in Manchester. He should write you a letter. He's a big tzaddik. Rav Brevda comes to visit you. These kind of people, they should write your letters, not me. I said, no. I listen to your CDs. I read your books. Please write me a letter. Now, I hadn't read the book, and how am I going to say no? So I figured this is how I was going to say no. I said, listen, Rebbitzin, I haven't read the book. If you send me the book when I get to New York, and I look at it, and I like it, I promise you I'll write you the letter. And I figured, 6,000 miles over the phone, I'll tell her no over the phone. But she was one step ahead of me. She said, here's the book. I printed it out for you already. She had it printed out in the manuscript, and she gives it to me. Okay, I took it. I said to her, look, tomorrow I'm flying to London, so I got to speak there, and then I'll read it on the way back. I start reading it on the plane from London to New York. I could not stop crying. It was so sad how her body is deteriorating. And I think the saddest part of the book was her daughter's 8th grade graduation. Because on the 8th grade graduation, all the mothers look pretty and the daughters look beautiful and everybody's so happy. And her daughter has to come in with a mother in a wheelchair. And she's embarrassed for the mother, and the mother's embarrassed for her, and it was just awful. And then near the end of the book, she has an expression. I tell you, I read that expression, I took out my pen, I underlined it, I double-checked it, I highlighted it, and I made up my mind for this expression alone, I'm going to write her the letter. It wasn't her expression. She heard it from someone, but listen to the brilliance of this thought. Any fool can count the seeds in one apple, but only the highest power, Hashem, can count the apples in one seed. Listen to that again. Any fool can count the seeds in one apple. You don't have to be a big chacham. You go to the refrigerator, take out an apple, count 4 or 5 seeds. Oh, but only Hashem knows how many apples can grow from one seed. I called her, I said, Rebbitzin, the letter's yours, I'm going to take care of it. I wrote it. And you could get the book. It was printed by Feldheim, Facing Adversity with Faith. And she used the name M.L. Kramer, a pseudonym, because she didn't want to write her own name. She was afraid too many people would call her, and she was too tired. Now listen to this. The reason I'm telling it to you is because of something that's going on right here, within 2 miles from where we sit tonight. Listen to this. Many, many years ago, in the early 1950s, in Hamilton, Ontario, there was a Rav, his name was Rabbi Mordechai Green. And Rabbi Mordechai Green was the rabbi of the Orthodox shul. And the shul was falling apart. It was a small shul. But the conservative shul and the Reform temple were big, gorgeous buildings. And Rabbi Green, who told me the story, knew that if he doesn't build a beautiful building in the new area of Hamilton where the young couples are moving, he's not going to have a shul. The Orthodox people, they're not going to come to his shul. He had to borrow money. So he goes to the Royal Bank of Canada, and the bank manager is a Mr. Amy, a Goyish fellow. And he sits down, and Mr. Amy says to him, Rabbi, how could I help you? He says, well, I want to build a synagogue, and I have to borrow money. I need $150,000. Now, he didn't want to say that he wanted to build an Orthodox synagogue because he figured the bank manager knows the Orthodox people in Hamilton, they don't have any money. How's he ever going to get his money back, right? So he might not want to, give him the money. So he said, what kind of synagogue you want to build? He said, well, we worship every Saturday and every day. He says, yeah, but what denomination? Well, he said, I'm an Orthodox rabbi and I want to build an Orthodox synagogue. And as soon as he said that, tears start coming down Mr. Amy's cheeks. And he's crying. And Rabbi Green said he just sat there. Like, what did he say to make this man cry? And Mr. Amy said to him, Rabbi, I'm going to give you the money and you'll be able to build a synagogue, but I want to tell you why. He said, when I was a little boy, I lived in Timmins, Ontario. You could look it up. Timmins is 400 miles north of Hamilton. And Hamilton is freezing in the winter. You can imagine what Timmins is. He says, one night my father was killed in a fire. And the only ones left were me, my siblings, and my mother. And we were devastated. We had nothing. Because my father was the breadwinner of the family. Now, in these small towns, he said, there's always a general store. And the general store sells everything, hardware, clothes, food, everything. It was owned by an Orthodox Jew. His name was Sam Bukovetsky. 2 days after the fire, Mr. Amy is telling Rabbi Green, Sam Bukovetsky came into my house and said to my mother, Mrs. Amy, as long as I own this store, your children will never have to buy clothes. You come in, you take whatever you want. You never have to pay me. If you want to pay me, that's up to you. You take whatever you need for your children. And every morning I want you to come in, you take any bread, milk, or eggs, or butter. I will never charge you. Whatever you want, you take. And you could keep an account. You want to pay me one day? That's fine. I will never ask you. And Mr. Amy said, I want you to know, Rabbi, only because of that Orthodox Jew did we survive. And my mother got a job eventually. I was able to go to college. I became a bank manager. And when I saw you through the open window walk into the bank, you looked like an Orthodox Jew. And suddenly I remembered, I never paid back that Orthodox Jew, Sam Bukovetsky, from all those years ago. And as soon as you said you were an Orthodox rabbi, I knew God sent you. And you know something? Listen to this, you will not believe it. Most of you who live here know that within a few blocks from here, there's a yeshiva called May, right? May, M-A-Y, Mesivta Ateres Yaakov. You know who's the Rosh Yeshiva of that yeshiva? Mordechai Yafi. You know what shul he grew up in? That shul in Hamilton. He told me the story. And you know something? Mordechai Yafi, his parents would not let him go to a yeshiva out of town till he was 18 because they were survivors. They were afraid to let him out of town. So they wouldn't even send him to Ney Yisrael in Toronto until he was 18. How did he remain frum? Because of Mordechai Green's shul. That Sam Bukovetsky planted the seeds, and look at the apples. And who did he plant the seeds with? Not even a Jewish person. Made no difference. Because the Amy family was a family in need. And when you do something and you plant seeds, look at the apples. The apples planted and seeds in the Amy family, and you got a Rosh Yeshiva right here, a couple blocks away from him, who's got hundreds of Talmidim, and he's the most wonderful guy, as you all know. That's amazing. Do you think Mr. Amy would ever say anything wrong about an Orthodox Jew? Of course not. That's how you curb the hate. You plant seeds. Of course, you might need guns, but that's not the answer. And you might need vigilantes outside the shul, but that's not the answer. You got to make sure before those criminals get to the shul, they understand the Jews are the nicest people in the world. That they're thinking about Kiddush and Shemayim. That's the real answer. Not more guns. We may be forced to do that, but that's not really what the answer is all about. So I just want to say one more thing. We'll review and end with a great story. I believe that from tonight on, we have to start caring for each other. We have to make a chesed planner. And that means that every one of us should have a book that we write down one chesed a day that we did for somebody else. I'm not talking a husband for a wife for a husband. That you got to do if you know what's good for you. I'm talking about outside the house. You don't become a big, balas chesed because you made a husband a cup of coffee. Or he doesn't become a big balas chesed because he bought you a bouquet of flowers, every Shavuos. Every day you got to do a chesed for somebody else. You know why? Because oilam chesed yibana. Can I trouble you one more time? Oilam chesed yibana. The world is built on chesed. And chesed could even be, if somebody's not Jewish, it makes no difference. They're human beings. They were created by Hashem. And look what happened when Sam Bukovetsky, what he did for the Amy family. And right here, thank you so much, right here in Woodmere, and Lawrence, and the 5 towns, hundreds, if not thousands of kids by now have gained from those seeds and apples. So let's review everything that we said, and we'll end with a fabulous story. Let's remember we all love America. It may not be our country or my country. Eretz Yisrael is our country. But America has done tremendous things for us. And we owe Hakaras HaTov. It's a Medina Shel Chesed. There's no question about it. That's right. Give it an applause, right? America's a great country. And if it's a great country, we got to treat everybody who's a citizen. as an equal, with derech eretz, the way we drive, the way we talk, everything about them. Let's be Makadesh Shem Shemayim. Just remember, you're a walking, talking representative of Klal Yisrael. When you do a good thing, they don't say, oh, Mr. X did this or Mrs. X did this. A Jew did this, a Jew did that. You represent all of us. Yes?
Shai asked me to ask you, please offer back.
Of course, of course. We have to remember to always say thank you. When we leave tonight, say thank you to the police officers that are there for us tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. I always admire how neat and well dressed they are. It's amazing. Besides, yeah, you guys always look great. I don't know. You and pilots, you always look amazing. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But anyway, you got to teach us some lessons, how you keep your weight down and everything. I don't know. Maybe you'll come up here, right? But anyway, we have to remember we're never going to stop the hate, but we could curb the hate. And we could curb the hate by Hakol Kol Yaakov Vayadayim Yedei Esav. We are Erlich HaYidden. We have to respond as Erlich HaYidden. Of course, as we said, we might need guns in the shul, and we might need police officers, but that's not what is going to change things. It's going to make sure worse things don't happen, but we can make sure these things don't happen even before they start. Let's make sure that we daven out loud. We each make up something that we're going to do to daven out loud. We'll try to care more for each other. We'll try to keep that chesed planner, as we said. And as we said, we're not going to try to rip out the eyes of others and make other people jealous. If Hashem blesses you with anything, tell it to your mother. Keep it to yourself. Be grateful. Say moedim. Thank you to Hashem, but you don't have to say anything to anybody else. I just want to end with this beautiful thought. Many of you know, and there's some people here who have come with me on these trips that I take in Europe, where Yiddishkeit flourished. And I remember the first time that I went to Italy, and I was wondering, what is in Italy? What kind of Jewish history was in Italy? And of course, the Bartanura was in Italy. Bartanura is not only a wine, you know. Bartanura was a real person who lived in Italy. He was a great Talmud Chacham. And I'll tell you something, you know Rashi wine? So I just want to tell you, it has nothing to do with the speech, but I just got to get this off my chest. The first time that I saw Rashi wine, I decided I'm not going to, how can I drink Rashi wine? A chutzpah, somebody calls wine Rashi? Imagine calling a wine Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael. How can you call a wine Rashi? But I had to admit, their advertising was fabulous. You know what they said? Our wine is Rashi, all the rest is commentary. Isn't that great? Got to admit that, that's great, right? Now I drink it already. But anyway, fine. But anyway, so the Batsanura was there, the Sfarna was there, the Masil Shisharim was there. And then I realized that the saddest day of the trip was going to be the final day when we were going to go to the Arch of Titus. The Arch of Titus is in downtown Rome by the Roman ruins. And they try to show you how old the country is, thousands of years old. And I wondered, why did Hashem allow this arch, which if you see it online, you'll see there's a sculpture there, and it shows that either the Jewish prisoners or the Roman soldiers are carrying out the menorah. And it's in its perfection. Most of the Roman ruins, half the buildings are gone. And they keep them there. But why did God allow this? And you know something? In 1953, the Ponevezh Rav came there. Some say you're not allowed to walk under the arch, so he walked around it on the side. He said, Titus, you thought you were going to outlive us. Today nobody cares anymore about the Roman Empire. But we have Yidden living all over the world. And then I told them a story that happened with a Jewish correspondent. He was not religious. And what happened was that he came to the northern part of England, near Newcastle on the River Tyne. And that's where Hadrian's Wall is. Hadrian was Hadrianus. Hadrianus killed Rabbi Akiva. And this guy was reporting on that wall that was 70 miles long. But today, people just take off pieces of brick from it. It's not anything that's so holy or whatever. And somebody came over to him and found out that he was Jewish. He said, there's a Jewish neighborhood here. Would you like to come to see the Jewish neighborhood? He said, what Jewish neighborhood? Gateshead. Oh, he never heard of Gateshead. So the genius, whoever brought him in, said, I'm going to show you the Rosh Hashiva. He brings him into Rabbi Leib Gurewitz. Rabbi Leib sees that guy knows nothing about anything. He says, come with me. And he takes him into the Gateshead Beis Medrash. Rabbi Matisyahu Solomon Zalzangazin told me he remembers the day that Rabbi Leib brought in this guy. They gave him a yarmulke, plopped it on his head, and he never saw Beis Medrash before. And he sees big books, little books, on the shelves, off the shelves, everybody's yelling, screaming, asking questions. Rabbi, what's going on here? How could you think here? And you know what Rabbi Leib said to him? He said, I'll tell you why I brought you here. Because you came to report about Hadrian who killed Rabbi Akiva. Nobody cares about Hadrian anymore. But you see these 200 guys, they're still trying to figure out what Rabbi Akiva meant. And there are hundreds of places all around the world where Rabbi Akiva lives. And they're trying to figure out what he meant. Rabbi Akiva lives, Hadrian doesn't live anymore. And then I understood. You know why Hashem left that arch there? For us. Not for the million tourists who come there every year. We have to learn that lesson. You know what that lesson is? The journey of the greatest anti-Semites ever. Titus and the ones who killed the Yidden in the second Beis HaMikdash and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. They carried out that menorah. That was the beginning of the journey of Galus. How are we going to end the journey if we carry that menorah? That menorah is Kinei Mitzvah V'Torah Or. Every one of us has to know that the real light of Klal Yisrael is Torah, and the real candles are mitzvahs. If every one of us does Torah and mitzvahs every day, we're going to make it to the end of the journey. That anti-Semite, Titus, he started us on that journey when he threw us out of Yerushalayim. But if we want to make it to Mashiach, we got to carry that banner. That's how we're going to stop the hatred when Mashiach comes. Hashem should bless all of us. Have tremendous respect for every person that Hashem created. Yidden or otherwise, makes no difference. We can curb the hate. Every one of us in our own lives can curb the hate. We won't stop it, but we could curb it. We can be decent, we can be kind, we can be elegant, we can do a lot of great things. And we can come back to our Father in heaven by davening out loud, doing chesed olam chesed yibana, and carrying that banner, Kinei Mitzvah V'Torah Or. That's how a Yid answers this problem. Hashem should bless all of us that come to protect us, the police officers, the vigilantes, all those wonderful government officials. We need them. But it starts even before that. If we do all the things that we spoke about, hopefully, Be'ezus Hashem, we won't need them. They'll be able to go to the ball games and enjoy life, and maybe see the Mets win a game this year, maybe. And who knows? If we keep on doing all the wonderful things, maybe we'll be zeicha to see Mashiach in our time. I thank you all for inviting me. I thank you for listening. Have a great time.